One host stepped forward and turned to Chrylsis. They spoke inside his mind. You cannot banish him while he resides within the shell. I will bring him out, then act and send him back to whence he came, and not the Prime. And with that, the host walks up to them and placed their hands upon them. No! Chrylsis cried out. Yes! Screamed his creation, as the voices pushed him to unleash his powers, but not at his creator, but at the host that touched his form. An easy target, he thought, and then realised his error. The now vulnerable daemon and soon-to-be lost light were gone in the blink of an eye, and Chrylsis immediately began drawing power from the host, turning it towards the Prime where he had sent them. Across the vista stretching out towards the awakening Prime, his magic blasted, a channeled beam of pure power striking it in the distance, ripping it from the anchors it had, rending the nodes asunder and tearing it from the connections that had kept it tied to the Primes, as well as other planes. Then the host set about recovering from the ordeal, regaining their strength and mourning their losses. Chrylsis spent a long time ensuring that his creation was trapped and could not venture back to the Prime worlds, carefully removing connections, blocking nodes and disconnecting planar anchors, and ensuring it was unable to claw its way back from where he had exiled it. Upon the Prime where he sat, it was quiet. He had fed, and he was satiated on more knowledge and power than he had fathomed could possibly exist. Each host he had taken was itself a vast store of knowledge, of experiences, and of course raw power of the very gods themselves. He could survive upon this feasting for millennia easily, without the need to feed, but he would need to make plans to gain more power if he was to enact his will upon Chrylsis and the Source. He tried in vain to open a gateway to the host, but found that all ties had been severed. He reached to the planes and found those too no longer to be attached. Still, he had struck a blow that even the Source could not achieve. He had brought low one of the lights, and then 5 more, and to finish with one last who gifted themselves to him. This had indeed been a day of note for his existence, and the husks of the fallen would lay here in memory of his deeds, his trophies. He would drift here forever, or at least for a very long time, planning, exploring this limited space, and practicing his newfound skills. The prime place that was now his home was beset with strange constructs and buildings that his host knowledge told him were in fact temples to the hosts, as well as shrines that could act as direct communication lines with their specific host. These would be useful in future times. He just didn't understand how to use them, yet. But he did understand he was what was known as a fallen host, a god cast down from on high. However, unlike those usually cast down, he was far from stripped of his power. In fact, he had more, much more than he had to begin with. He waited, dormant for millennia, until his pocket plane drew close to a small demonic plane, and then the creeping blight of conflict began anew. The daemons channeled and extended their plane towards his, and eventually they were close enough to allow a connection to be established. It was at this point he awoke from his slumber, alerted by the presence of new magic. He waited at first and allowed them to establish a solid portal, and then, as their magic began to wash over his home, he siphoned it off, tasting it, and learning about this invader. He did not know this daemon, and so he waited and gleaned what he could about their kind, but he knew that should he make his presence known, they would simply cut the cord and set him loose once more, and he could not have this. However, he was also a daemon, or at least he had been. He reasoned that with the knowledge the hostess gifted him with, and the knowledge he was born with from his origins, that he could make a lesser version of himself. But as hard as he tried, he discovered that he could not. He tried to craft a shell from magic to host a portion of himself that he could control and send forth to view this other plane, but he was unable. Apparently, he had not been gifted with this ability. In truth, he had never been gifted a demonic home plane, and therefore could not sire spawn the way other daemons could. He would realise this in time, as more magic was drawn from this incursion and the knowledge that came with it, until eventually a larger presence was felt, a holder of knowledge, a true form of a lesser of his kin. This demon had been sent to scout out, now an anchor had been made, to seek out what resided here and discover what power could be taken and what forces would be needed. It sensed the host immediately and sought it out. It stood in all its misshapen glory before the host's shell and touched it tentatively, and being shocked by the sheer power it held, it was stunned for a while, and he took advantage of this chance. He let his demonic power reach out and envelop this invader. He studied it intensely, saw what it was, how it was created, and most importantly, which plane it was a part of. He would always know this type of daemon now. The voices started up at the opportunity of food within its grasp, and he willed them to stop. They did not, and as they built to a crescendo, he tried to shut them out, diverting his thoughts to creating a smaller of himself, a lesser, just as this was a lesser of its master. And that's when it happened. The demonic energies enveloping the demon began to strip the magic from it, unravelling the threads that crafted it and making them part of his own makeup. As this was being done, his thoughts of creating a lesser came to fruition, but not as he had hoped for instead of what he was aiming to craft, he instead made a duplication of that which he was consuming. The original demon was devoured, totally, but this newly crafted one was the same in every way bar one. It was his. It felt like the original. The magic was the same. The abilities it held infused within its threads were the same. It was indistinguishable from the original in all ways, but he could sense it was his. He had created his first lesser, his first minion, and although it was not of his design, he revelled in the fact he could at least control it.